Welcome, everybody, to another Sustainability Happy Hour. My name is Pat Keys. I'm the lead scientist at the School of Global Environmental Sustainability at Colorado State University. And this is my co-host.
Hello, I'm Micah Bennett. I am the communications specialist at SoGES. And welcome to Friday. Happy Friday. Welcome to what I'm going to call kind of the last episode of the Sustainability Happy Hour of the first season of the Sustainability Happy Hour.
I like that. Can we call it a series? Because that's like a British thing where you have it. It's not a season, it's a series. And so then like the second series, what do you think? Maybe we should take this to like a formal discussion before we settle on it.
I got to watch some more British TV if we're going to start doing that.
Yep.
But so we started this show in May, which is crazy. And
it is totally crazy. I can't believe it's been that long.
So we'll talk about that more at the end of the show. Before we get too far, Pat, do you want to tell us what people can expect coming up?
Yes. So the usual song and dance is what you can expect from us that you've seen for the last, 7 months. We're going to have some news. We're going to talk about some fun facts, and then we're going to bring out a phenomenal artist and academic. Erika Osborne is going to be joining us today. And she is a professor at Colorado State University, as well as a practicing artist. And she works with environmental topics. And so it should be a really interesting conversation. We might even be able to pull up some examples of her artwork as well. So stay tuned for that. But why don't we have a round of fun facts? What do you think?
Yeah. You know, my fun fact wants to leave, so I should go first. So I am currently in Wisconsin. I am working.
Oh, you don't say.
Oh yeah, you know I'm in the homeland, and so I'm from Wisconsin. My parents live here, and with remote work, being able to work from anywhere, I'm lucky enough to get to spend a little bit of extended time here working from my residence, my parents' house in Wisconsin. And one of the best parts about this whole thing is this right here. This is Ravenpaw.
What's its name?
Ravenpaw. Look at it.
Ravenpaw. Okay. That's pretty clever.
She has been in our family since I was a teenager, and she's very sassy, and basically she's a great cat, and I get to cuddle with her all the time. And that's my fun fact, is that I have a cat named Ravenpaw, not named after. Okay, goodbye. Yes, she's upset.
She wants to leave. She wants to leave.
Goodbye. Not named after the house of Harry Potter. That would be Ravenclaw.
I know, that's totally what I thought it was. I thought it was like a play on that.
No, it's not. This cat is named after a young adult book series called Warriors, about clans of feral cats that I was obsessed with when I was a tween. And there's a black cat in there named Ravenpaw, and that is the name of the cat.
How old is Ravenpaw?
Probably like at least 12.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's that. I don't know cat biology at all. So is that old? Like
cats can live to be like 16. I've known like 20-year-old cats.
Okay.
Yeah. So she was great. Okay. But anyways, that's all I got there. We've got a great guest, or a great viewer right now, Johnny Plastini. He's got 2 tiny kittens. Aw.
Oh, come on.
I wish you could put pictures in the chat.
I know, totally. Well, we'll invite Johnny coming up here soon, and then he can share his kittens on the chat sometime soon. Okay.
That's me. So what's your fun fact?
Okay.
Look in the script. You can steal my other one.
No, I'm actually going to go off. I'm going to go off script.
Oh my goodness.
When I know, right? This is super dangerous. So when I was after college, I had an early job, and somebody once told me, it's really useful if you could draw a map from memory, a world map. And I was like, come on. And he sort of was like, you should learn how to do this. I'm paying you. Why don't you learn how to do this? So I learned how to draw a map from memory, because I was just looking at this globe over here. And I was like, that's probably kind of weird, right? Like most people probably can't draw like a map with borders and all the country names from memory, right? Yeah. I don't know if that's fun. It's a weird fact.
That's 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 your party trick. You need to start breaking that out at
But
parties.
people usually get bored after the first continent. They're like, all right, this is kind of boring, especially if you start with something with like 70 countries. Anyway, okay. Hey, we've got another, whoever this is. Oh my God, Micah, whoop, whoop. That's
Stephanie
great.
Kelly.
That's the energy that we want.
That's what we love.
On right
Hi,
here.
Stephanie.
Okay.
I think you live in like Sweden now. So thanks for watching.
Wow. I mean, not surprising that our audience is so international and cosmopolitan. I mean, among millions of viewers.
Oh, but she's from here. She's from Wisconsin.
Come on.
I know from childhood.
Okay. We should probably, we're so far behind now because the fun facts took so long. That's okay. Let's talk about some of the news that's come across the news desk.
So one article that I want to talk about is this one's from The Guardian, and it's about the EU is going to ban the use of lead shot by wetland bird hunters. So wetlands are very delicate ecosystems, and lead is poisonous, as we know. And so with the passage of this regulation, lead shot is going to be banned from all wetlands in the European Union. And this decision is expected to pave the way for phasing out all toxic ammunition. One important fact is that some studies found that 1 million water birds are killed by lead poisoning each year.
Holy cow.
And Denmark outlawed lead shot in 1996, but most other EU nations continue to use it.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I know. I'm pretty sure this is still used in the United States as well.
That could very well be true. I don't know about that. So yeah, that's kind of a big deal. And
that is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that we know is that biodiversity needs every help and assist that we can give it right now. And so that's definitely a good thing. It seems like something that's relatively easy to address.
Right. Because there are other forms, right? There's non-toxic ammunition. It's not like
right. If you got to go kill some birds, you can do it maybe with something else.
Right.
Okay, so that is some good news. The other piece of news that we're going to talk about very briefly is this. Oh, no, I don't want the news summarized each morning. Thank you, CNN. It's that the president-elect, Joe Biden, has nominated somebody for a position that hasn't existed ever, which is as climate envoy. And this is John Kerry, who's sort of made climate change and climate change action a key aspect of his kind of, he's still a politician, but post, I guess, like elected official time. And so he actually made the oceans a very significant part of his sort of policy and agenda when he was, I think, Secretary of State. And then now he's going to be serving, starting in January, serving as this climate envoy. And one of the two big parts of this is that President-elect Biden has said he intends to sort of recommit to the Paris Accords, which is a very important part of climate change action globally. And the other interesting thing is that this is going to be at a cabinet level. So this is a very high level position. And the reason that we're talking about this here is that we talk about climate change a lot on the Sustainability Happy Hour. Mm-hmm. And having this level of importance given to climate change policy is a very important step towards addressing climate change globally. So I think this is pretty encouraging, and I think it should be John Kerry doesn't look very excited here. Maybe this was not taken when he got the news, but hopefully he was smiling when he got the news. But I think with that sort of wraps up sort of our news segment. We're going to have a couple of these links in the show notes after we post the videos. But I think we would like to go ahead and bring Erika on. How does that sound? Do we got a thumbs up ready to go? Erika, we're good to go? Yeah? Okay, let's do it. Boom. Welcome.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
I'm still so weirded about like seeing everything in reverse, which only is a problem for me. And you guys look great. And I'm like, everything is in reverse.
Right. Right. You're like, wait, my good eyebrow is on the other side of my face now. Yes. That's why people love the front-facing camera.
That's right. It's good. Thanks for having
Crystal
me.
Fleming.
Yeah, welcome to the show,
welcome.
Erica.
Super.
So glad to have you here. Thanks for helping us, kind of get our first series off with a bang.
Of course.
That's right.
Before we get too far into anything, would you mind introducing yourself to us and our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Erika Osborne. I'm a professor in the Department of Art and Art History. And Johnny mentions that it's not weird for printmakers because he's a printmaker and everything is in reverse. That's a pretty good one.
True.
But anyway, so Johnny's a colleague of mine in the Department of Art and Art History, another SoGES fellow as well. And so I am also an artist. My background's mostly in painting and drawing, although it kind of like spins out from there often to other things and whatever.
I was looking at your portfolio and there's some things on there that are not paintings or drawings.
That's true. I always say it's like rooted in that. And then kind of, I tend to let content kind of drive whatever materials I use for the work. So it does spin off from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's me. I have 2 kids. They might come running by. You never know.
That'll be your fun fact.
That would be my fun fact. Exactly.
I keep waiting for my fun facts to just pour into the office. And they tend to not.
That's good. Mine seem to always know. They always know they shouldn't be somewhere and they make their presence known. So anyway.
Okay, so maybe to kick things off, maybe a starting point could be for us to chat just briefly about how did you find this sort of nexus of your interests in art and also thinking about kind of I don't know what the title is, environmental art. Like, what's like the category? Is there a categorical name for this kind of art?
I think that would probably be the best one.
Environmental art.
Yeah, kind of, or art that deals with addresses environment. Environmental art sometimes connotes like artwork that happens out in an environment, which isn't always
right.
Much. It's place-based art.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, I grew up in the West, in Utah actually, and spent tons and tons of time outside. I also grew up in a family of artists and writers. So my father's a writer by profession. I have aunts and uncles who are professional artists, and
wow.
Which is cool. So anyway, art was always in my past, as was like being outside, and so landscape painting kind of was my entry point. And I think there was a point in which I just was like, how do I marry my love for painting the outdoors and painting landscape with some of the things that are so, like, I found myself as an activist. I found myself being really politically engaged, but yet my artwork wasn't really addressing that. And this was kind of way back in the day, undergrad. And I kept thinking, like, why do I always leave out the roads and make sure I take out power lines? And so I think it was kind of that question that led me to going to grad school. And I was lucky enough to get into and picked a school that I wanted to go to, University of New Mexico, which had a really strong painting and drawing program, but also had what's now a whole area, and it's called Art and Ecology. And sort of this, again, a lot of field programs for artists. So let's get out in place. If this is about being an artist in a particular environment, let's be in this environment. And then I went on to run those programs for a few years before kind of making my way to Appalachia and then back. So anyway, it kind of started from that question, and then the questions keep continuing and keep, leading me to other questions, which I think is good. Yeah, there's a really famous.
So you started in Utah, and then you said you went to Appalachia?
Yes. Well, I started in Utah. I spent quite a while in New Mexico for grad school, and then after grad school for a little while, running this program called Land Arts of the American West, and then another program called Wilderness Studio. And then I went to teach at West Virginia University. And I attempted to, I did put in place courses there that were field-based courses for artists, and in a very different environment, very different like relationship to land, and also lack of public lands and things like this. And so that was really actually very interesting and very, it was kind of a profound time. And I developed a few courses. Place Appalachia was one, art and environment. And art and environment, I still teach kind of a version of that here at CSU. And then, of course, I'm teaching a handful of other kind of segues and iterations. So
let me jump back a little bit to, we were trying to describe, what kind of art you do. Johnny came in with another good comment. He says, I view your work as site responsive art versus the more common term site specific. Now, I will say, I haven't heard the term site specific. Could you kind of describe that to me and in what site responsive might mean in juxtaposition to that?
Yeah, so site specific would be like, I'm gonna make a piece about this particular place and in this particular place. So you think of like Robert Smithson's The Spiral Jetty. You think of James Turrell's Road and Crater, the Nancy Holt's Sun Tunnels, these pieces that are like placed in a particular location, and they rely on that location. It's like that location is as much a part of the piece as any of the other materials, right? And I think site responsive is a little less like concretely attached to a particular, like it responds to that place. So it says, okay, here I am in this site. I'm going to think about this site. I'm going to respond to this site. That work isn't necessarily like reliant on physically being in that space, but it is responding to that space in all sorts of ways. And then that kind of happens, I think, like when you're there. It also happens when you're back and sitting in front of your computer and doing research or reading news articles, about a particular environment or a particular place, and then creating from that space.
So I was cruising around your website and I found this part of your portfolio. Is it okay if we just briefly touch on this? Would this be part of that idea?
Yeah. Yes. I think all my work is.
Okay.
Very much. But yeah, this is definitely very much about, it is very site responsive. Could
we choose one of these and I could like blow it up and then you could kind of walk us through what that means? Would that be okay?
Sure, go for it.
Do you have one you like here? Or hopefully you like them all actually. But do you have one that was would serve that purpose well?
Yeah, let's to be honest, any of them you could go down further.
Okay, let's see. Mike, how about you pick? Which one is like looking good?
Let's do any of them. Do the Grand Canyon one, for example.
This one?
Bingham Copper Mine. Do the Bingham Copper Mine right below it.
This one?
Here. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, so hold on a second. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. So this painting is a big painting. It's about 8 feet by 4.5 feet or something. So it's big.
Oh wow!
And
wow.
Yeah, so I am from Salt Lake City, and for anyone who knows that area, they know that to the west of the valley is the Bingham Copper Mine, and it's a huge intervention in the landscape, and I've seen it all my life, right? But at a particular moment, this particular moment in time with this particular body of work, I started really thinking about it in conjunction with two things: manifest destiny, for one, kind of the nexus, but for two, the way that that era of Western landscape painters, so Thomas Moran, Albert Bierstadt, who painted this region or the northern Colorado a lot, Frederick Church, how they painted and like the sort of influence their paintings had on the development of the West. So here, site responsive, if you want to think about it this way, like this location has been part of my view shed my whole life.
Mm.
Then I'm starting to think about that view shed in the context of Manifest Destiny, and the artists, I think, were a huge part in bringing about the development of the West. So Thomas Morant, they were hired by the railroad companies. They went out with the Great Survey teams. They their work was, they made lithographs, and it went out and promoted tourism, but it also created the national parks, but it also brought history. And so I was really looking at those artists, like how they construct a composition and the kind of sublime perspectives of this, or the kind of the sublime view that they take. It's kind of magisterial. They're above the landscape.
Yeah.
Always light from the back. It's always dramatic. There's storms. And I started
Absolutely.
And they painted the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and these, Rocky Mountain National Park. So I started to kind of think about the artifacts, like Bingham Copper Mine as an artifact of that era, and also as kind of a reference to one of Thomas Moran's famous paintings called The Chasm of the Colorado, which is the Grand Canyon. So thinking about the Bingham Copper Mine as this large chasm, very deep, almost as deep as the Grand Canyon. It's 2 miles, across. It has a lot of similar color palette, and started to kind of like think about the two in relation, which actually took me back up to that site. So I rode my mountain bike way up high in the Ochre Mountains up above the Bingham Copper Mine, and did this like several times over several years, probably 5 years. I was thinking about this painting before I finally got the photograph that I wanted to use for it. So again, so I've seen the site, I've been to the site's in my view shed, in my blood. I start to think about the site in some of these intellectual ways. That brings me back to the site. And then from that point, I'm kind of reinvesting all that other knowledge back into the site and taking photographs, gathering information, and bringing that back to the studio where I create these paintings. That's kind of a long-winded way around that question.
That's really helpful though, because you explained a lot of the questions that I was going to ask, which is, are you sitting out there like one of these kind of railroad hired artists, like with a big easel, like there, and then this is what you came up with when you were there for an afternoon? Obviously not, took longer than an afternoon. So that's helpful to kind of build the picture, like what this actually, the process is.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, those guys, they went out and they did studies. They did, little watercolors and drawings, and they took notes, color notes.
Oh, okay.
And then they brought all that back to their studios where they created stuff. In addition to that, they would like the view from, the famous painting of Yellowstone Falls by Thomas Moran, for example. You can never actually see that in real life. Like he took the foreground from looking downriver.
It's like a composite.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, and it was all about this, like, how do I create this sort of ideal kind of spirit place, right? Which was really mentally constructed as well,
Yeah, completely.
So yeah. So I actually kind of modeled that way.
Yeah, that's really cool. And one of the things I'm struck by with this is if you sort of squint, it looks like one of those paintings, right? Like you don't see that, like it's this dramatically scarred landscape in a lot of ways. Like you feel like it's one of those style paintings.
Right.
I bet if you were standing really far away, like in a gallery, and you saw this from across the way, you might think this looks like one of those.
That beautiful style. Natural site. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And think about like function and form and, similarities of form, very different functions,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is really helpful to kind of ground the conversation a bit more in sort of the practicalities of and the kind of process of your artistic style. Is there another, I guess, in thinking about your kind of work with SoGES, is there a particular project that you feel like, maybe not even just with SoGES, but maybe in terms of like a sustainability perspective that you would also like to kind of highlight or talk about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's see. Actually, some of the newer work that is, of course, is not on there right now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because I spent so much time on the computer, and it's hard for me to want to get back on the computer to update my
fair.
website. But I do have it. It's like on my Instagram. You can see some images and things like that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But I mean, I think so. My process in almost every body of work that I make is very similar. Like, I usually am out somewhere and I'm really captivated by a particular place or a particular tree or a particular, like, even an anthropocentric kind of mark on the landscape. And I kind of record it and I think about it, and then I go back to my studio or my office or studio, and I like start a process of research to try to find out everything I need to know about a particular place, which usually like makes the assumptions that I originally have when I was out at a site kind of like turn on their head. And then I go back out to a place and I like try to kind of see it through all of these layers of like ways of knowing. So the process for my work is really the same. It doesn't matter what the pieces are or what the outcome is. But a lot of, so I wish I could, I guess maybe I can't bring up, I could probably show some images too. If I don't know if I can share a screen on this thing, but
maybe.
We've never tried that before. I don't think she, oh, well, she's in the StreamYard. Last time I hit buttons, I messed things up, so I try not to push buttons anymore.
I can just talk about like some of this, and that might give people a gentle nudge to go like look at the Instagram at least, and then I promise by the end of the holiday break or the winter break, I'll have my website updated. I promise. But I spent last year in Mexico on a Fulbright fellowship, and I went there because I had been previously doing. There, said it would happen.
Oh, I've got your Instagram pulled up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, good. I was just about to do that.
So is there one I should search for, or?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right.
Let me just, I'll look too while I'm talking, and then I'll tell you to scroll or something.
Okay, let's do it.
So there's an image. Actually, if you go down a little bit, there's a couple like campfires. Actually,
campfires. Yeah, I see the campfires.
Yeah, and if you even scroll down way further,
yeah,
you might see a
oh, it doesn't
me
want
on
to
a horse, me on a mule. You see that picture?
It doesn't want it, so I'm not signed in to
Instagram. I'm signed in, so let me search for this.
Oh, okay, you do it. So it's Erika Osborne, artist. Or Erika.
There, I see it.
Anyway, there's this funny picture of me on a mule. If you want to, can you find that's like halfway through down the stream? Maybe you could start there. It's a funny picture for one. I've never ridden a mule, and I rode it up like 3,000 or 4,000 vertical feet on like some gnarly trail with these ranchers in Mexico. Anyway, it's sort of.
How'd that go?
It was super sore for a day.
Yeah.
But yeah, these ranchers that I was working with were like, oh, no big deal. You got this. It's no problem. We can do this. And yeah, you're almost there. Down just a tiny bit. Right under. There she is, right there. So I love that picture. It's hilarious because I'm definitely a hiker, and I kept telling this rancher that I was with, I'll walk it. I can walk this, no problem. You're gonna ride. So it's just like, I don't know. You can see the terrain that we were walking across, right? Yeah. Anyway, so I did this project in Mexico, which I've been. Over the course of many, many years, a lot of my work deals with forest management, and especially as it relates to trees and fire. And that actually led me to this particular forest, which is a dry forest in the southern Baja Peninsula. It's actually just outside of the town of Todos Santos, and CSU has a center there.
Oh yeah.
And so I went there with this. They were going to be having their first ever prescribed burn ever. And it's a very healthy forest. If you go up a little bit on that other way. Yeah. Even. Yeah. Go just a little further. No, other way.
Sorry.
Sorry.
We have a fashion high five here. That hat makes the shot.
Oh,
so
yes.
You got a high five there for your fashion sense.
Oh, nice.
Go down a little. Sorry.
I'm going too fast.
Actually, no, go up a little because I think it's a better image. You guys scroll my Instagram on this. It's terrible. Okay, there's a camp that you're at it. That campfire right there. The painting of up a little bit. No, a couple back. Sorry. It's a painting right there. That's it.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. Nope, down one.
Nope.
Yeah, that one. That's a good, you could kind of focus on that one. You were on it. Yeah.
Oh.
So I went down there because they were doing this first ever prescribed burn, and it's a forest in which fire is always operated as it's supposed to, and it's a pretty healthy forest, and it has high levels of endemic species, like 23%. I mean, it's kind of crazy. And
remind me what endemic species are.
So they're like species that are only found in a particular spot.
Gotcha.
So this particular mountain range between the flora and fauna has like a quarter of its species are only found there. So it's a really like unique environment, and it's the bottom part of this chain of mountains that goes through the San Pedro Martir and up into the Sierra Nevada in California, where I've done a lot of research and work, which as we know, the fire season has been, this last fire season was crazy, and we've had crazy fire seasons. And so, you know, these unhealthy forests that we have in the Western United States, it was kind of like looking in the past at what a forest could be or look like before major management, right? But now they want to kind of come in and manage in a way. They have a different set of knowledge. But I think in terms of sustainability, what was so interesting for me over the course of my time in Mexico was seeing how fire operated within this community and within this mountain range. And it was, you know, my work is often like, someone recently wrote about it and they were like, there's often disasters. And I was like, yeah, the work's pretty dark in a lot of ways. Like it's definitely not very hopeful in certain senses. But going down to Mexico, like changed that a bit and got me really thinking about like, how do we do this? How do we cultivate? So the ranching communities in this particular mountain range, they cook over open fire. So this was us on maybe one of those camping trips. I went up several times it's really remote and it's kind of private land of these ranchers, but it's also a biosphere reserve, a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place. But when we would go up, we would pack up on mules or walk, and nobody had stoves. Nobody had, I mean, you just like, they had little caches of, you know, gear, but it was just, everything was cooked over a fire, everything. There was no coolers, nothing like that, just all fire. And the ranching homes are also that way, like all over open fire. They're burning their fields. They don't have the infrastructure or the cash, the money to fight fire like we do in the West. And we saw it, right? You know, all those helicopters going up and over Fort Collins, just like you know, for 2.5 months straight.
Yeah.
They don't have that at all. And so they have a fire brigade, which consists of local volunteer ranchers that go and kind of dig fire lines, basically preemptively, right? So they'll take a ridge line, they kind of cut a break in the fire. And that's all that they can really do. It's too remote to get water up in there or anything like that. And it was like kind of amazing to see fire being cultivated and kind of used or let go within these confined areas. And I kept thinking, and I think especially having to come home early because of COVID, and then come home to like the worst fire season we've ever seen in our area, right? And thinking about like, gosh, why can't we need to figure out how to do this on this was like a micro scale, right? And kind of a forced sort of because of resources, but also just history. This is how the people have lived there forever. But how do we do this like on a macro scale? And that really ties in with a project that I've been working on at a UC Berkeley field station in just north of Lake Tahoe, where they're kind of trying to find different ways and different strategies for both thinning and utilizing fire, and so reintroducing fire into the landscape, thinning, creating an economy for small scale lumber. And anyway, I got back from Mexico and I'm still kind of working through this work, and I saw fire scars there, and fire scars in which like the next year things are green, right? And the big trees don't die. And I think if you, from where you are, well, we can skip it and move on. But it was just such an interesting like place to be and to think about like micro and macro, and how do we kind of, and I came back to this fire year here and just thought, this is what we have to do. This is where I want to spend my time and energy. And I want to focus on how we can like cultivate making artwork that talks about sort of fire as a tool, how we can sort of reintegrate it into our landscapes. It's healing and kind of nurturing. Even if you think of prescribed burns, prescription as medicine, then you start to think about, well, how does fire act as medicine on a landscape? And so that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in making more work about that.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if you can kind of expand on that, based on, I was looking through your profile, or maybe it was your department website, and you gave a talk in 2019 that was, oh wait, just kidding. I'm getting my questions mixed up.
It's okay.
you said it was so interesting to be in this place, and your art deals with cultural connections to place. And so what does, you're kind of getting on it, but I'm wondering if you can just sort of more or explicitly say, like, what does place mean beyond the physical space?
Oh yeah.
And as a follow-up, like, where do you feel your place is and like the role that your art plays in that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, places, there's been a lot of writing on this, but the difference between space and place. And I agree with a lot of that writing in the sense that, space is like kind of a delineated environment, but place is sort of how one interacts with that environment, and also all the relationships, all the history, all the community, everything. And for me, like, you just can't understand a place unless you've lived in it, right? Unless you've like spent extended periods of time there, because the outsider perspective sometimes seems so clear, or seem like, why would a community do this and not this? Or, this is the right idea, or this is the right, policy for this particular place. As an outsider, it's one thing. And when you're in it, it's like so much more nuanced and so much more complicated.
Yeah.
I'm into that. I like that. I like that complication. I like it when things aren't black and white. And I think a lot of my paintings, like even that one, Pat, that you were looking at, the chasm of the Bingham Coppermine painting, it's like, you said it, you're like, you could not tell what that it was an abrasive or, anthropocentric big mark, abrasive mark on the landscape. I'm interested in that. I want all these layers. I want it to unfold a little bit more slowly and be a little bit more like allow people to kind of bring their own histories or their own, like it should have levels of connection. The work should, I think. And if I'm going to be an artist that attempts to talk about place or particular places, then my work has to do that, because place is nuanced and it's full of all sorts of gray. And of course, like my hair, like all sorts. I gotta turn the other way. I gotta turn the other side. See, I turned the one way. I think it was one. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's so full of gray, and like you can't really pick up on that unless you're part of it. And so, I'm interested in that as an educator. I'm interested in that as an artist. And so in terms of, I guess I kind of answered both those questions, maybe, unless you have a follow-up, Micah.
No, I mean, would you say, a part of art, kind of what you're saying is you want people to come to it from their own histories in their own place. I mean, that is why, art is interpretive, because as people relate to it more empathetically, it's going to have a bigger impact. Would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of different voices for visual art. And like if I were to compare it to, say, writing, like there's journalism, which has a particular language, right? There's prose that has a particular language. There's poetry, and it has a particular kind of feel or a way of sort of addressing. So even if you had like a journalistic piece and a novel and a poem all about the same place, they would tackle that really differently, right?
Yeah.
Visual art's really the same. So there is a place for the kind of voice that hits you over the head, that's really didactic, that tells you what to think. And, you think about like political satire, you think about like, like really strong kind of shock inducing work that has a particular visceral experience. That's not my work though. I am interested in kind of a little bit more, I'm interested in the material for one, like I'm interested in the history and the language of painting and drawing, and but I'm also interested in sort of like these layers of meaning, and that a work kind of like seen in context with other work, to see like for example, that Bingham Coppermine piece is an interesting one to talk about this, because you might come to it thinking it's like, oh, Bingham Coppermine should buy this, Kennecott should buy this. It's epic and it's gorgeous. But if you're coming to it from a perspective of like maybe a more of an environmentalist perspective, you might look and question that. But if you know something about our history, then there's this other layer, which is given to you in the title, or even just the structure of the painting itself. And then you start to read the statement, and then you understand something different about the work. And so I'm interested in that. I like that kind of like onion peeling.
Yeah. I really like your example about, prose, a journalistic article, or poetry can all talk about the same thing.
Yeah.
With very different meanings. I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Oh, Pat, you're on mute.
Oh.
I just wanted to bring in this excellent question from another SoGES person here, Monica Farfan. She says, "Hi, Erika, your work is beautiful and very thought-provoking. I also love dark melancholy work. Are there any ecological or environmental thinkers who resonate with you and your work, past or present?" It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so just thinking of, since we were talking about writing a little bit, I find myself very influenced by writers, and a lot of everything from kind of naturalist type writers to journalists like McKibben, or, for all these different ways of kind of thinking about that, or Robin Wall Kemmer, or There's a whole series of paintings or artwork that we didn't look at called floaters and focal points, but the focal point work is really like catastrophic. And I was actually thinking a lot about like Cormac McCarthy's The Road and The Grapes of Wrath, and like these people I think are really profoundly also kind of place-based writers too. Yeah, so something like that. I was thinking a lot about like The Road and Grapes of Wrath in this body of work. I think I tend to sort of digest a lot of writers and a lot of works on like ecology and environment, everything from more kind of scholarly, theoretical articles or books, all the way. But I think where I find my like the people who are most influential to me are the ones that also use language really well. So like Robin Wall-Kemmer, for example, or The Overstory. Yeah, it was one of my very favorite books recently. And
Johnny chimes in here and says you recommended Overstory by Richard Powers
Right. But I also love like McKibben, or someone who can just like speak to the public in a really direct and really like impactful way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the range is wide, I guess, but I tend to gravitate to write like naturalist writers, someone like Dillard, or maybe even going back to like Annie Dillard, for example. Gosh, now of course I'm drawing all sorts of blanks, but anyway, that Richard Powers book, where I felt like really was like what I would love my work to do. It was just the way it wove nature and culture together, and it was also really poignant and really like tragic and beautiful and all of that. So I tend to kind of look to writers a lot as guides.
Yeah.
A book actually on that. I just finished a book called Station 11. Have you heard of that one?
No,
but I've heard of that one. I think it's on a shelf in here somewhere.
I think it's by an author named Emily St. John Mandel. Does that sound?
Okay. Yeah.
And it takes place after. It's not good pandemic reading because it takes place after a pandemic. That's but the writing, I was just so struck by kind of the beauty of the writing. And also when you were just talking about this, like how textured and real the physical spaces felt,
right.
And especially after a lot of people are gone and how things change, and it was just it was very like it's one of those kind of stories or novels that has just kept like it's not leaving my mind, like it can't escape for some reason. And actually a lot of your artwork feels really evocative of almost that whole kind of very textured, detailed, kind of visceral sense of what's happening, and not necessarily like a bad way or anything, but more just like this, like it's very clear what it's about.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think I'll take that compliment, and I wrote that down to the book. Yeah, I taught. We team taught with Lynn Badia in the English department, a course, kind of an energy humanities course, a couple years back, and then we're going to be teaching it again next year, which will be really great. And that
oh, cool.
Yeah, we were looking a lot at like we did an energy futures section, and like so we were looking at the energy and culture and the relationship of those two, but through the lens of basically visual art, film, and literature. Yeah. And then we kind of created this mock museum, which was awesome, that the students did creative work to kind of project, like as if they were from the future looking at this particular moment in time or the past.
Cool.
And, oh gosh, some of the like the energy futures dystopian novels and things like that, like the language, I mean, it's hard to stomach that stuff, but when it's written well, it's like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing about this book it made me, I was like, this is an incredibly bleak in many ways world, but at the same time, it's just like gorgeously written, and you can't like look away, and there's still hope there, and it's still, and I don't know, it was, I strongly recommend it. It feels like very much in this kind of genre.
Well,
Okay,
I'll be reading next.
There you go. We'll have like an unofficial on the side book club.
I love that idea. Yeah.
Okay, so we're getting close to the end of the hour. And so I did want to make sure to I wanted to ask, or if you don't have another question, Mike, I just want to know, like, what are you excited about working on next? Maybe it's something that you're doing now or something that you plan on doing next year. But I guess I'm just curious to know, like, what are you thinking about doing?
Okay. Yeah. So like I said, the fire thing cemented itself pretty heavily, especially coming back to the US and seeing this really stark contrast. So wildfire is the thing right now. And a couple things. I mean, I luckily have some good friends in the Forest Service, and I'm hoping to be kind of more, I'm interested in looking at some of the biggest fires in Colorado history through time, and just seeing how they play out, and the differences in areas, like just from even some of the footage I've seen, like areas where fire seems to be in a prescribed kind of like healing kind of way, and areas, of course, where it was catastrophic and too big and too hot. But I am curious to just like this in my backyard to be more sort of in these spaces through many, many years. But even so, that I'm curious to see where that leads me. That's again, like this idea of like, I have this idea, I've been to these places. I was actually at up and in the Rawas the week before Cameron Peak started, and was
Wow.
been doing a lot of foraging lately. So I was actually like in the plants and
like foraging for wild edible foods.
Yeah, or medicines and things like that.
Cool.
So I was there, and I was like gathering, and I was photographing, and then like that next week it's gone, So I have these really kind of interesting mirror images, and I'm curious to be kind of in that space after and just over time, since I live here, and see where that leads. But in the more immediate present, when I was in Mexico, I made connection with this ranching woman who's also a ceramicist. So a lot of the ranching families, they make their own cookware. And she's kind of like this matriarch of this family. And I was about to be working with her to create these pots that I was really interested with. The clay was on site, firing them on site, working with her to build them. But that were in so these vessels, bowls that were in the shape of imagine like the map, if you're looking aerially at like a fire break, kind of container shape. So making these bowls, these larger bowls that are in the form of like prescribed burn areas and fire break outliers, so that I'm interested in this idea of containment, and how we can cultivate fire. And fire is like a nourishing thing. And so making these bowls that are going to be fired on site. And so I'm obviously not in Mexico doing that right now, but I have begun kind of the sister project for that here. And my friend and colleague, Sana Mimami, and I have been going out and kind of hunting for local clays and digging and trying to process some local clays. And then I've been working with a friend in the Forest Service to get some of maps of prescribed burn areas, fire break lines. So it'll be kind of like a macro micro thing. And
Oh, that's very cool.
yeah, and the pots in Mexico were so lovely because they were raw clay and they were fired, and they would often have fire marks, and then they were put back in the fire to cook. And so they have like this kind of history of fire written all over them. And so I'm going to be making some of those. So
That's great.
yeah.
That's going to be really
Thank you
cool.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then, Micah, do you have any final
I don't.
questions or?
I mean, I do, but like, we'll have to have you back for series 2.
Yes.
We say that basically every time.
I bet. I know.
But I think I'm pretty sure it's true every time, though.
It's true every time.
Yeah, well, I mean, work progresses and things move forward. It'd be fun to hear what everybody's like.
Yeah.
Next year looks like.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, and we've got a quick comment from Johnny. I like the containment analogy. That sounds like a cool collaboration. Are you going to paint with glaze on the pots?
No.
No. Okay.
I'm more interested in the fire doing that.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. And
okay, so
old fire also. So yeah.
So the last question we ask every guest before we go our separate ways is it's a hard question. It's not a hard question. And if you've seen any of the other shows, then you know. What's something that's happened during this pandemic time that we're all sort of working in these weird, strange ways, spending a lot more time at home than we ever thought we might. What's something positive that's happened in this time? It doesn't not work related or anything, or it can be.
It can be, yeah.
But it can just be anything, big or small.
Small moments of joy or silver linings.
Well, I mean, in terms of place, one of the I've always been a big traveler, and whether we're visiting family in different locations or we're spend a lot of time kind of actually in Mexico or in the Caribbean for a few different reasons, but we haven't obviously done any of that. And then also the layer of the fires and closures from the fires, I think kind of forced us to explore Colorado really differently and Wyoming really differently. And I actually my husband and my kids the same, like loved that. We went to weird places and we just got to spend some time in areas and get to know areas better that we only knew slightly. And I appreciated that a lot. Like I really liked being forced into these other places. That was great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just want to say a huge thank you for sharing your time with us. This has been fantastic to kind of hear about just your whole artistic perspective and your process.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me.
Okay, well, with that, we will say ta-ta for now, for this series at least. And so thank you again, Erika.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for tuning in. So I'd be happy to continue conversations as well if you want it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Erika. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so.
The sun has literally set on me.
I was wondering. I was just sort of like, I wasn't going to say anything.
So I'm an hour ahead of you, and I did not plan for that. It's currently 5 o'clock here. And
you're further north, right?
And I'm further north, and it's the land of darkness. And yes, so I'm literally holding my phone in front of my face right now.
That's a good idea, though. Actually, that's like a Zoom innovation right there.
Yes.
It's your own little, what is it? The circle light that you're supposed to have.
Right.
Okay, so then let's wrap things up then, so you can turn a light on.
Right. So I do have a couple of quick plugs for SoGES. Couple of news things. First of all, tomorrow is World Soil Day. I don't know if Monica's still on here.
No big deal. World Soil Day, no big deal.
World Soil Day, no big deal. And the Global Soil Biodiversity Initiative was a contributor to this big FAO UN report. It's that slider, actually, if you want to click on it.
I clicked learn more, but it keeps taking me to the next slider. I don't think I know how sliders work.
You should just click. I should just go.
Boom.
There we go.
We got it. It worked.
About the state of knowledge on soil biodiversity. And so it was released today in conjunction with World Soil Day, which is happening tomorrow. So be sure to check that out. It's a pretty big deal. And then, as always, you can sign up for updates at sustainability.colostate.edu/sustainability happy hour. And you'll get emails right from me about upcoming shows. And speaking of upcoming shows, as far as a schedule for next shows, we're going to take a break over the semester break. And since 2 Fridays from now, I'm pretty sure is like graduation, I don't think we're going to be doing a show then. But we will be returning in the spring. Happy World Soil Day. Thanks, Monica. So,
yes, we'll be returning in the spring. We're just not totally sure when. So sign up for those updates. I promise I'm not going to send too many long-winded rants about
you can't
the Dune
because
series.
You don't have access to the email
yet. No, you'll only get updates about the show itself. So
right. So yeah, we're doing some strategizing. We're doing some thinking about what we want to do with this crazy experiment. We've had 17 broadcasts since we started.
Holy cow!
So that's
really
that's pretty cool.
Wow.
So you should definitely stay tuned to see what we come up with in 2021.
That's nuts.
Isn't that nuts? Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I'm not like completely done. I am completely done with 2020, but I like shudder to think what 2021 could bring when we so blithely walked into 2020.
And then, as always, we're going to have these links and other things that we talked about in the show notes. That's going to be in like the comment section on Facebook or the description on YouTube. So if you're interested in that, that's where that is all going to be.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, our millions and millions of loyal fans, for joining us at the end of Series 1. I feel like we need to have like a grand finale, but that's okay. We don't need one right now.
Woo!
Woo!
I could do like
some special
scary.
effects.
I could do scary voices.
Whoa! Come on!
It's so dark.
Look at this, Johnny. One more comment from John. Oh, that's Ryan. Where did Johnny's comment go? It's very X-Files themed with the phone light.
Ooh.
It is actually. Now it's like even creepier. This is like, Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Oh, that was a great show. All right, we should let people get to their weekends.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in to the Sustainability Happy Hour.
And we will see you all in 2021.
All right. Bye.